Hello, church. Hello, church in America. Welcome to the podcast. The Lord's been busy, and I'd like to share some up-to-date news, some words from the Lord. Word number one is time to spare, no more. Okay. And I know I gave you a word the other day that we were out of time, but God reemphasized this last night that there's no time left, that we must uh, get down on our faces and bow before the Lord and yield, repent, ask for mercy. Uh, the other day, when I gave the word about bird flu, that was a word he gave me like 20 years ago. And within 24 hours, the first U.S. death occurred of someone in Louisiana. I gave the word about infiltration of the Pentagon and that the Pentagon would fall from the inside. And my son called me and said, there had been three terrorists from the Army, and that one in New Orleans, of course, and then the one from Colorado Springs, all military related. He gave me another word, and this word is 20 years old, but it's time now to release it. He had told me when the bird flu hits, it was time. We were at the precipice, at the brink. And so the word from 20 years ago is I saw a polar bear come over to the United States and take a chunk, just bit in to the northeast around the New York City area. He was biting at New York City. And I know that because of what we have done will result in what God will do. There's a consequence to our actions. In 2000, it was New Year's Eve, 2000, last day of 1999, the Lord told Lynn and I to go to New York. And so we began driving from Kentucky. We stopped in Columbus, Ohio, and picked up an intercessor and drove up to Buffalo. I mean, it was nonstop. And it was like, Lord, how far do we have to go? And he said, Orchard Park. And we went to Orchard Park, and it was almost 6 o'clock. And New Year's Eve, everything starts shutting down. And he said, buy a knife and buy an apple. So we stopped at the store and bought a knife and an apple. And he said, now go. We said, where, Lord? He said, Baker Street. So we drove to Baker Street, and he said, church. So there, right there was a church. And we stopped at the church, and he said, slice the apple, cut the apple. And it was a bright, fresh apple. We had just purchased that thing 30 minutes before. And as we stood at that post, there was a post and it had steel gates along. We were by the parking lot there. It was an entryway. And as we cut into that beautiful apple, we opened it up and it was rotten to the core. And he said, cut out the core. And of course, New York City is known as the Big Apple. And that intercession was a prophetic act. And God was cutting out the rot. And of course, we prayed for grace and mercy for New York City and for New York. But, here's 24 years later, and it's coming to the forefront. Look at the judgments. The other day the Lord said, the avalanche has begun. He's been talking for years to me about an avalanche. And he says the shaking has begun. Look at the West Coast. After I gave that word on the avalanche the other day, there was an earthquake on the West Coast, that shaking, confirmation of the word going forth. And now we see a fire. And it's like they can't put out the fire. And if you think of LA and you think of all the pornography and all the evil that has come out of LA, and it's just like, they brought fire to the house of God. They brought fire to the families, and fire to men, the seduction and the enticement. And here is the fire coming out. And when something burns up, it's no more. It's consumed. And then if we look at the East Coast to New York City and what has come out of there, the abominations, they've tried to ruin Trump, and he's asking, for mercy. I mean, Trump is God's man. It doesn't mean he's perfect, but look what happened to New York City. They have judged and judged and judged. And the Lord, he had said in the Old Testament, an eye for an eye. So with the judgment you use, the judgment comes back on you. Look at all the gates that have been opened up in New York City, and look at the prophetic act of cutting out the rot of the apple. And so keep your eyes on New York City. Then he told me last night the pipeline is important. China wants to bankrupt the United States. Biden, he did this emergency act trying to shut off all the drilling. And of course, Trump had said, drill, 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 baby, drill. And of course, Biden is, he's not hiding anymore. He's coming out there with everything that he is straight from the pit, just evil, the decisions that they've made. And so that pipeline is very important for America. The pipeline to God, but also the pipeline for energy and for oil. And, just Trudeau's reaction, a snowball chance in hell. That's what he said about Canada becoming the 51st state. Trudeau resigned before he was fired. And all I got to say about that is be careful, a snowball's chance in hell. Don't you think God can do whatever he wants? And this snowball in America, this cold that has come across, God said it will not last. That summer is coming. Okay, so this cold, this attack, and all this severe weather, it will not prevail. And so go through, and go through. There's a better day coming. Then last night, the Lord said, the keys have been given, dig them out. And I saw a drawer and all this stuff in the key in the drawer, and there was my key ring in there. And he says, dig it out. Over the years, the Lord have given us keys. Yeah, he had me reading through Luke last night, Luke chapter 1 and Luke chapter 2, about John the Baptist, the prophet that comes to prepare the way of the Lord, and about Jesus, the pronouncement of Gabriel. And so these words are going out because Christ is coming. He said that the other day, I'm coming soon. Christ is coming. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. Be prepared for the coming of the Lord. Keys is important. Last night, 2 nights ago, he gave me 3 dreams about schools. And, the problem with America is that we had a great education system, and then rebellion got in, and people that wouldn't parent, okay? And so they didn't want consequences for actions, and the inmates took over the asylum. Yeah, I'm talking about schools. Inmates took over the asylum. It's just like letting Rikers Island exist with all those deplorable conditions, Fulton Jailhouse, down there in Georgia. How in America can they do? It's worse than a third world country, okay, is what they've done there. And there'll be consequences for that ungodliness. So I'm in the gym, and the Lord said last night, when I went into the gym, my desk was in the gym, and they had put a puppet on the desk, and there were kids' cars on the floor. And so I began to clean up someone else's mess. You understand that when God transfers a baton, that when God gives you a desk, an office, a place to sit and to be seated and to do some work, that's it. It's important. One of the first things that you have to do is when you come into the office is clean up the other guy's mess. And that's exactly what Trump is already starting to do before January 20th. So I went over and I took the puppet. Trump is no man's puppet. Trump will be no demon's puppet. And these model cars, these play cars, get ready for the real deal. You're not going to see some puppet ministries. You're not going to see some toy ministries. The last day ministry will be like the apostles of old. They'll stand up and there'll be have a word of authority, and there'll be power that comes out. Read Revelation. Read it. Get the keys. Receive the keys. And so that mess was cleaned up. And as I began to walk back to my desk, there was a partition hung. You know how they split a gym at these high schools? They bring this big curtain over. Well, this curtain was about 10 feet off the floor, and it was yellow, blue, yellow, blue, yellow, blue panels, and it was all across. And from these panels, it was beginning to drip, beginning to outpour, beginning to come down. The showers of the Lord are beginning, okay? And the yellow and the blue is very important, for the Lord has told me and shown me that the yellow is the apostolic, the move of the apostles. And the blue, that light blue, that is the prophets, the prophetic move. So the apostles and the prophets, I'm not talking about who people call apostles. I'm not talking about who men make prophets. I'm talking about the real deal, those that are called, sent, and maintained by the Lord himself. And so clean the mess up, get ready for the outpouring. And then finally last night, he told me, this is the last word I received last night. He said, success starts here, heart-wise. So we've heard about all these consequences. We've heard about these things, and we know these things that are going on. And the Lord is concerned with the heart of America. with the heart of the church and the heart of his people. And the Lord said, you owned 5 places and lost one because you don't care. America, church, men and women of God, no longer can you not care. Or 20%, 1 out of 5 will be lost. There's consequences to our attitudes and our inaction. Then he said 70 nuclear missiles are in the United States, and they came through the Ukraine. All this money, the billions and billions of dollars that the industrial complex, the military complex, that the warmongers have sent into Ukraine. I'm not saying that Putin is guilt-free. He's a rat. There's guilt enough for everybody. But the way that America has approached it is the wrong way. Instead of feeding the beast and sending money, money, and money, we should have been on our knees. We should have been on our face asking for mercy. And then the Lord said, one nuclear missile is pointed right between your eyes. It's personal. It's personal to me. It's personal to you. It's personal to America. It's personal to Israel. Those hostages, they say that only 20 hostages are left of all those that were taken captive. May God have mercy, and may you begin to pray like never before. Father, help us. Amen.